NPCs in this game are savage.
You owe me money for my therapy sessions.
It's really, really off-putting. The character model's also looking really Voldemort-y.
What is going on? Who did this?
I think we can all agree that the two biggest names in the fashion doll industry of the 2000s was Barbie and Bratz. And as a girl who loved a fashion doll, one of the hardest decisions I had to make was deciding whether to be a Barbie girl or a Bratz girl. And you can definitely be both, and I personally was. I owned and loved both Bratz and Barbie dolls throughout my childhood. But I definitely knew who I was when it came to video games, and that is all thanks to the Bratz Rock Angels game of 2005. Welcome to episode 2 of the Good Old Girly Games series, where we reminisce on our favourite girly games from the 2000s. If you have been here before, hello, it's lovely to see you. If you haven't been here before, hi, I'm Otter or Tilly, and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at a game from the Bratz franchise, Bratz Rock Angels, and honestly, this game is questionable on so many levels. I was definitely looking at it through rose-tinted glasses as a kid and before I did my research. So get ready for a wild ride because this game is crazy. But before we jump into our nostalgia for today, if you enjoy this video and want to see more just like it, why not consider giving that like button a little high five to let me know that I'm making the right type of content for you, and consider joining the Otter YouTube channel for more 2000s girly gaming nostalgia. And without further ado, let's jump straight on into this video because we have a lot to talk about. Now, initially when I began writing the script and researching for this video, I had 3 games in mind to discuss, like I did for episode 1. And boy am I glad that I started with the Bratz Rock Angels game because there is a lot to unpack in this game, and I figured there is so much to talk about, why not give it its own episode, and we'll get in a little bit deeper into the background of this game and the development and why it is such a mess. And I only really remembered that this game existed because I follow a lot of doll collecting YouTubers. One of them brought up a Bratz Diamonds Forever doll. And I was like, oh my god, I had one of those dolls. And then I remembered the TV movie that came out for it. And then I remembered the game that came out alongside it. This game was published by THQ and produced by Blitz Games. And THQ and Blitz Games combined also produced a lot of TV and movie spin-off games, like SpongeBob, the US TV program The Biggest Loser, which I assume is using our good old friend the Wii balance board. Whoever decided to release a piece of software that would tell a healthy weight 8-year-old girl that she was actually obese,
You owe me money for my therapy sessions.
The game was dropped in 2005 on a variety of consoles including PS2, GameCube, Game Boy Advance and Windows. Today we are going to specifically look at the PS2 version as this is the one that I experienced. The PS2 and GameCube version of the game are pretty much identical other than the controls. The game is set out in an open world format with a load of tasks and objectives for the player to complete, and these are triggered by talking to specific NPCs around specific maps. These maps include Stylesville, which I'm pretty sure is the place where all of the Bratz lore occurs unless it's like specifically stated. Also London and Paris, and then there's a mansion map which I'm not sure what this is. It came up in a game guide that was written around the time that the game was released, and when I was watching playthroughs for this game, I could not figure out what the mansion map meant. The player gets to take control of each of the 4 Bratz, Chloe, Yasmin, Jade and Sasha, which I think is really nice because each of the Bratz dolls have their own specific personality, interests, style, and I think it's really nice that you get to explore all of these as the player instead of just like having one. So I'm not sure if I already mentioned, but this game is based off of the movie of the same name, which also dropped in 2005, and the game sort of follows the plot of that. It makes up like the different chapters of the game as you're playing and completing tasks. And the game begins with Jade, who has been fired from her job. She's really, really sad as she keeps reminding the player with the same voice lines over and over again. And you sort of get to grips of the controls and moving around at this point. We then find out, once you meet up with the other Bratz girls, that Jade has been fired from her job because her mean boss, Birdine Maxwell, who runs her own magazine production company with her daughters, who are stereotypical sexism-coded bimbos, and for some reason Jade worked with them, even though they are like the overarching villains of Bratz lore in any sort of media that they've put out, but we'll look past that plot hole. And because of this, Jade goes to her girlfriends, tells them how sad she is, and I think it's Chloe or Sasha suggests planning a party for Jade to cheer her up. So at this point, as you were planning the party for Jade, you're sort of getting used to the game as the player and the controls. So you spend a lot of time jumping around different shops in the map as you were buying Jade a new outfit to make her happy, some new makeup, and you learn how to collect coins and things like that, interacting with NPCs. And then you tell Jade that you are starting your own magazine company. Although all of them love fashion, designing fashion and like being in fashion news is Jade's sort of passion. So they decide to start their own one. And I don't know where they got all of the equipment from for this and how they set it up so quickly, but they essentially rent out an office suite directly opposite their competitors who already have an established brand and magazine. And they have their own PCs, which are like personalized to them, and like a photo shoot setup area. And I don't know how they did this, but they worked magic and they got it done. And obviously Jade is very, very happy about this. She's super excited to be able to pursue her dreams and her passion and finally get back at her boss, who is a bitch. After this, all of the tasks and objectives become related to finding stories for their magazines, and you follow up leads and stories to build up your first article. You might be wondering, where does the band/music rock element of this game come into play? Birdine throws away some invites to a London gig, and Jade finds out that these invitations were a all-expenses paid trip to London with a random ticket to a punk rock club with a really exclusive band. As part of the game, you then steal these tickets back, finish your first article, and then you fly all the way over to London. So they make their way to London, they are getting some more stuff for their article, only to find out that the band who was meant to perform has broken up. Oh my goodness, what are they gonna do? Well, if we know our favourite girlies, the Bratz girls, they are multi-talented geniuses who just happen to be perfect and great at everything they do. So what do? They start their own band and they perform instead, which then turns them into magazine producers / famous bands. Because that's a thing. You complete the rest of the game and the tasks that come with that. You end up going to Paris and featuring in the Ooh La La fashion show, and you end the game on a final performance as part of your new band and put the Tweevils into a hospitality role, which apparently is like what they deserved. But all I can say is at least they have a job with contracted hours. And yeah, that's the game. I feel like that was a whole mess for me to describe, but that's because this game is a mess. The plot is crazy and it's really hard to explain it without having to go into all of the ins and outs of exactly what happens. So now that we've looked at the main aspects of the game, gotten a vibe, talking about the plot, what you experience as a player, let's go a little bit deeper below the surface and talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. So if you haven't already guessed, the vibes of this game are a little bit hit or miss for me. The phone UI I actually really like as an idea. I know it's not original or like crazy unique, but for the time, I think it was a pretty smart way to go. I also like that you can customize the wrapping of the phone. I think that's a little cute added detail. And I do really like the fashion element of this game. There are lots and lots of different choices and ways for you to express yourself as an individual through the Bratz dolls. The clothes are cute, not gonna lie. Well, most of them are. Some of them are a little bit dodgy, but most of them are actually really cute, and I think they're well designed and well thought through. I do also feel that as much as the storyline is putting girls against girls, and it sort of has the stereotypical mean rich bitch sexist bimbo stereotype in there. I do think that it is really inspiring that these 4 girls start their own company in the face of failure instead of just giving up and doing something else. It shows that you should stay true to your passions and your dreams, and if one avenue doesn't work out, you can always go another way and try it a different way. I don't know if that's what they intended when they were producing this game, but that's kind of what I get from it. And obviously, not only do they go into magazine production, but they also become a band. And I also know that there is a lot of talk around Bratz dolls. Not so much now. There was a few years ago about how the visuals of Bratz dolls were kind of crazy and so unattainable. And I know that this was like a huge problem for people, especially some parents back in the day. I think the game really takes the ethos, message, vibe of the Bratz as a brand and puts it really nicely into a game. So I think for a young child who is a fan of the Bratz franchise, and especially the movie, they'd probably have an okay experience playing this game and being able to be partially immersed into their favourite fashion dolls world. Okay, but what the f*** are the graphics in this game? What the heck did they do to our girlies? They look so crazy. The textures, the glitching, the stretching of the clothes on models, the character models also looking really Voldemort-y. Like, why do they have no shading on their face whatsoever? Especially when they're like in the actual like open world setting, not when you're in like the fashion or makeup UI. Like on the dolls, obviously their noses aren't a prominent feature on their face. They are quite small, and instead of having like painted lines or like literal nostrils, they are like little mole mounds on their faces. But in this game, some of the characters look so creepy, like Dylan, for example, who is like kind of the comedic Carrie of the Bratz franchise. He's like a boy, really cringe, smelly boy, makes fun of the girls are smelly, that sort of boy. He's the type of boy that would have a New York themed bedroom, if you know, you know. He literally has no facial construct to his face. The only thing that gives him any sort of anything is his dodgy haircut and his eyes. That's it. There's something about Dylan, man. I just want to drop kick him. The clothes also, I know I mentioned that I do really like the clothes and the fashion lines and the variety of clothes that there is in the game, but why do they stretch so much on the models? Like this skirt, for example, why is this happening? And also, why do they look like they've been done in paint? I mean, they probably were, but I mean, I know there is a lot of different pieces in the Bratz game, but the fashion of the game makes up a huge chunk of it. It's one of the most important aspects of the game, is dressing up your character in different fashions for events. I think the main reason why the world looks so weird as well is that there's literally no shading on some of the items. Like, there's a bench in one of the clothing shops, and I think that does really take out some of the potential for the game to be as immersive as it could have been. I do remember feeling quite immersed in this game when I played it as a kid, but then there's these moments when you see these items and they look so weird and are really like your eye is drawn to it, and it really pulls you out of the suspension of belief that you have to have in video games like this. Oh, and one of my favorite parts of this game, so you know when you're watching a TikTok and someone is lip syncing to a song or like a famous viral video, sometimes it looks like they're chewing on vowels that don't even exist in the words that they are lip syncing, and you can't actually tell if they are taking the piss and trying to do a really bad lip sync, or if they're just not saying the words they're meant to be saying at all. Because this is exactly the experience you have when you are playing this game. When you look at the models, their mouth looks like they are like chattering from being out in the cold too long. Like they're breaking their jaw every time they open their mouth, or they've got some serious like jaw tension going on. And along with the glitching visuals, stretching of clothing, real odd mouth movements, the tasks and quests that you do in the game are also really subpar. They require very little thought or risk. A lot of them are the same sort of task or activity, put into different contexts. I cannot tell you the amount of times you had to collect pages for something as a job for your article. Or, for example, Cameron, I think it is, tries to get Chloe to like skate faster than he can around the mall. And one, why is this a thing? Two, why does she skate so goddamn slow? And three, why is there the sound effect of someone walking in heels as the sound of her roller skating? For the music stuff, the quest that you have to do is a posing minigame where I think you just take pictures of them. There is no actual music playing in this Rock Angels punk rock themed game. You just take pictures of them for their own magazine, which I think having the extra minigame of playing the music as a like variation would really help with the repetitiveness of the tasks and minigames that you do in the game. And my favourite part of this game, without a doubt, this alone makes me want to replay this game and experience it in 4K. The NPCs in this game are fucking savage. They rip you to shreds. I've never heard so many friends, even the other Bratz girls, shit on their friends' fashion choices in such backhanded ways. And for no reason. Like, I think it's really weird that they chose to do this, because the Bratz girls as a like brand are meant to be passion for fashion, express yourself through the creativity of clothing and fashion and like self-expression. And then in this game they decided that everyone around you gets the comment on what you're wearing, whether you like it or not. Realistically, this game is targeted towards, I think it's like 3+ or something. If you imagine like a 6-year-old playing this game, if you've ever seen a child dress themselves for the day, you will know exactly what I mean. Children do not care about clashing colours, clashing patterns, anything like that. They just wear what makes them happy and what they think looks cool. And I can imagine so many kids expressing their love for clothing and what they want to wear, putting them on their characters, thinking they look absolutely freaking fly, and then walking around their mall in Stylesville and just getting shat on by their best friends. Like, if anyone said these things to me in real life, I would actually cry. Like, not even maybe cry. I would properly cry. Don't get me wrong. I understand exactly who this game is aimed at, and you can feel what they were trying to do with the game as a whole. But looking at THQ, who published the game, and Blitz Games Past, I kind of do feel like the Bratz game was doomed from the beginning. Like other publishing companies at the time, like Ubisoft, THQ spent a lot of their time acquiring other game developers and production companies, as this is a really important way that they kept their business alive. Well, it's the core of the game publishing industry. Getting that big hit that will push sales and get them higher up the ladder in terms of game industry notoriety. For example, Ubisoft had Assassin's Creed, which is one of their biggest IPs to date, and EA had EA Sports, which covered a whole range of sports games, and they also had The Sims, which was the biggest simulation game at the time. I really do think that THQ was trying to follow in EA and Ubisoft's footsteps, but they never really found their big thing. They never really had their big hit. They didn't even start in the video gaming industry. They actually began in the toy business and then moved over into video games in the late 1990s. They secured a deal with EA as one of their first sort of big things to produce 5 games, and began acquiring different studios and video game production companies from there. And they very quickly found themselves in the early 2000s entering into a lot of agreements and deals with TV and broadcasting companies like Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, Disney, MGA Entertainment, who are responsible for the Bratz franchise. MGA licensed them to publish some Bratz games for them, which is how we have the Bratz games today. But they also produced a lot of other games like SpongeBob, Scooby-Doo, we spoke about a couple more earlier. But these really seem to be the only thing that they were finding any sort of success in or were making any sort of money from. But even though they put out hundreds of games under this sort of branding of kids games, family games, they really do seem like shovelware money grabs to keep them afloat during persistent financial troubles. And they sort of hit their breaking point in 2011 where they realised that they really weren't making a profit from these kind of titles anymore. As we have outlined in our business strategies, we are making shifts to reduce movie-based and licensed kids video games in our portfolio, which underscores our strategy to move away from games that will not generate strong profits in the future. Despite this shift, it was not very much of a help to THQ as they very quickly fell into bankruptcy and later liquidation in 2013. So on the whole, I think we can safely assume that Bratz was never meant to be a product that had a lot of time, energy, quality and meaning put into it from THQ and Blitz Games. I really think it was a shovelware cash grab, which makes me really sad because, as I mentioned, I do really think that the Bratz had a huge potential to have some great games made out of the lore and movies that were made. And I think it's a real shame that, like all other girly games of the time, they were branded as ways to make quick cash when you needed it, because it seems that a lot of people thought that girls didn't deserve the same quality games that were being targeted towards men and boys. And with hindsight now, we can obviously see that the later Bratz games do have slightly better visual quality, but in terms of what you are experiencing and getting as a player from one of these games, it really doesn't get much better. This game, despite its faults, still has a special place in my heart, as I'm sure it does for many of you guys. And I think it really speaks volumes that I never actually finished the game, because I just used to like going on there and running around in my new outfits, and apparently getting berated and catcalled by my best friends.
Well, it's about time someone pushed the limits of bad taste, I suppose.
I appreciate this video is probably a little bit chaotic and random, but that's because the more I was talking about, the more I wanted to put in and the more connections I was making in my head. So thank you very, very much for sticking it through this far if you have. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and give that subscribe button a little high five if you feel like joining the Otter Den and seeing lots more videos just like this one. And hopefully I will see you in the next one. Love you, bye!